From our members, can you keep an eye on the quorum? And we'll go straight to item 11.
You're right.
Sorry, 12. Done 11. 12. We go down south. Steve.
Got it.
Keep an eye on the Waikato with Phil.
Yep. Right, through the chair, I might just bring you up to speed on this one. So our submission to the Waikato District Plan, there was a draft plan which came out end of last year. We made feedback on that draft plan in January this year. Steve's going to go through a PowerPoint presentation that zeroes in on one of the main issues, which is the growth of the Tuakau and Pocono townships, but just a couple of other issues before Steve does that. So between when the agenda closed off and now, there's been no further feedback from any iwi groups. The submission is due on the 9th. Watercare are proceeding to make their own submission in their own right. They were part of our feedback that we did back on the draft version, and we have been in contact with Watercare about how they're proceeding with that. So over to Steve.
Afternoon. So just have a few slides here to summarise the key themes that have come through in the submission. And then I've got a few slides to zero in on some of the zoning and urban growth issues which we're addressing in the submission. So we've addressed 5 broad themes in the submission, and some of the detail has come through from these things. So the first is about the growth in particular around Pocono and Tuakau, and particularly about the zoning and how the zoning has spread out from those areas. And in particular, there is some additional urban expansion that is happening around those towns, and we've also commented on whether alternative housing types have been provided in those zones. Typically, the zoning pattern in the Waikato district is rural or town, so there is some possible provision for alternative housing types within those zones. So we've suggested a change to density, or perhaps an even alternative zone type to provide more density around those existing villages to prevent the spread of those towns. We've been very clear on our position about avoiding the loss of high-class soil. So the Waikato district has a definition of high-class soils that is slightly broader than our definition of elite soils, so it goes a little bit further. They have very strong policies and objectives about maintaining that high-class soil, but that hasn't quite followed through back into the first 2 bullet points about how the growth has happened around those towns. The 4th bullet point there is about ensuring that there are avenues through the plan to address cross-boundary issues that come up through infrastructure and development with Auckland Council. So those are already in the plan, and we're supporting those provisions. And then we also support other provisions about addressing reverse sensitivity in rural areas, which are provided in the plan, and we do support those provisions, and they are sufficient. So I just want to quickly cover off visually, in terms of Tuakau and Pocono, the additional zoning that's been provided. So on the left here we have the operative district plan in Tuakau, which shows sort of the orange and the yellowy areas are residential, and the purple and blue are industrial business land. And then on the right-hand side is the proposed zoning. So you can see there's quite a substantial increase in the yellow and creamy, orangey, taupey kind of colour to the northeast. So it's quite an expansion. And a lot of that land is actually defined as high-class soils. So we have raised that as a concern in our submission. And similarly with Pocono, the land to the east, some of that big yellow blob out there, a good portion of that, around about half, is high-class soils. So the real thing we're pointing out, really to zero in on, is that whilst the plan has higher strategic objectives about maintaining high-class soils, and those follow through to the rural zone provisions, they haven't quite followed through into the way that they've undertaken their zoning. So we think there's a bit of a slight mismatch there, and that's one of the key submission points that we've made. And happy to take questions.
Thank you, Steve. Now, You've done some extremely good work here, and I really commend you for keeping a really close eye on the Waikato District plan changes proposed here. We're probably cutting you a little bit short, but I think if there are questions, you can cover the issues of protecting that productive capacity, the rural hamlets. That was another key issue in the submission, at the risk of creating ribbon development all over the place. Some cross-boundary issues as well, but I think Deputy Mayor, you'd like to move these recommendations?
Yes, please. I'd like to congratulate the staff on the work they've done, Mr. Chair.
Happy to second.
Second by Councillor Walker. Thank you, Councillor Walker. Questions? Councillor Walker first.
Yeah, I'd just like to endorse the comments that you're making. Just on the rural hamlets, I mean, that's a real backdoor method of intensification in the rural area. It was quite a bit of work that the ex-Rodney District Council did on that, because hamlets were part of the flavour on the part of various planners. It's a real concern, and all of the arguments that you put there, frankly, are incredibly valid, especially as they go to elite soils. Just around the elite soils, and I endorse the comments you're making around Tuakau and Pocono. One of the features of those locations is you've also got access to water, and we'll have ongoing access to water. So that is, again, a rather, well, not unique, but it's an increasingly critical factor, because in many locations they're actually going to be running out of water, and there's going to be a lot of competition around water. The other issue that concerns me, that just goes to the high-class soils or the like in those areas, is because of proximity to Auckland and the increasing requirement that Auckland is going to have for fresh produce. So I don't know whether that's adequately reflected in your comments, but I'd just say the more you can bolster that, the better. Okay, can we take that on board? Yes. Thank you. And just one last comment, and it just goes to flavour of the month on the part of the government around dealing with water issues and wastewater issues. Quite obviously they will be significant issues that go to hamlets. So I just toss that in. Thank you. Good points. And Councillor Cashmore?
Yes, thanks. Team, have you actually had a look at the Papakura Hamilton growth study as proposed by Minister Twyford, and some of the work that's been done around that, and how that imposes upon this? Is that be part of your thinking?
Are you referring to the corridor study? Yes,
yeah.
Yes. So we have mentioned that in the report, in the submission. What's happening with that is kind of it is being developed at the moment. So I would imagine that there will be some results coming out of that study that will actually influence the decision of the council when the submissions come in. So due to the phase that it's in, we have mentioned that, but I would expect there would be some recommendations and outcomes and actions from that should be incorporated by the council when they make their decisions on the submissions.
I think it's quite a bit in that, Mr. Chair. The other thing we're really noticing right now is the social infrastructure provision, which they just do not have. It doesn't matter whether it's libraries, swimming pools, halls or community facilities, they just pour into the Franklin area, and we've got to be quite tough about that. When I challenged them about it last week, so you've got to start giving some money for the libraries, between $80,000 and $90,000 a year. Shorthand's nothing in the pockets.
I'm sure you'll get it out of them, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah.
Councillor Filipaina.
I think it's just a question. With the maps that you've given and the two together, I mean, where would I find the key to the colours? I mean, I know you tried to explain, you know, the colours is just that when I look at two maps side by side, I want to see what the differences are from the one to, you know, to what we had to what we've got. So, I mean, that's all it was. It was just a comment around the key to the colours. I mean, where would I find them so then I can at least have a better look at them? I look through our the report, the agenda, but yeah, can you?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we didn't include the maps in the report, but the planning maps are available on the Waikato District website through the proposed plan, so they have a similar sort of structure to our plan in terms of the maps as well. Yes.
No, that's right. I'll have a look at them. I just wanted to see what the difference
We can
between
provide with links.
the two.
We can provide you with links if that's helpful for you
Yeah,
to have
yeah.
a
Look,
yes.
it would be. Thanks.
Okay, there it is there.
It's just, it's all the best soils out.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. But I mean, you know, when you were
Yes, I
talking
can-
about dwelling,
If
because as you can see with the two maps, you got your yellow part that's extended further than what the first map is. So I don't know what the yellow is, and that's all. That's but at
we
least they can
Steve,
send
what's
me
the
the
yellow?
link. I can have a look
We know,
myself.
I know what it is.
Mr. Chair, I can talk. Yeah, I can talk through these colours. So, the colours have changed from the old map to the new map, which doesn't help with the comparison. But here we're looking at this yellow is residential. So, the Waikato has a very simple zoning structure. So that's straight residential land. So, probably somewhere between single house and mixed housing suburban in the unitary plan. That's what that would be. This land over here is village zone, so that's countryside living, rural residential, kind of large lot sort of situation. This blue is business and town centre land.
Yep.
And then all this purple, this is two types of industrial. So this is heavy industrial here, and then this is a light industrial land here. And then the green is open space. So on this one, the residential is represented by an orange colour and a different yellow, which is the village. So it makes these are approximately the same areas. So you can see that this yellow is this
Exactly.
existing rural.
That's why I asked.
So apologies, yes.
Yeah.
All the rest,
It's massive.
all the rest is rural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what alarmed us when we had a briefing on this 2 weeks ago, was the low yield of this residential, and much of this residential being on terrific productive soils.
Yes, and there is.
So look, just in closing, members, the feedback I've given to our team is to actually be quite firm in our submissions to the Waikato District Plan. Probably in the past we've not crossed the boundary and taken a lot of interest. The invitation this time is to take a lot of interest, because it has significant impacts upon Auckland. And also I think we've got something to share with them about how we've developed our unitary plan. So Steve and Phil, thank you, and continue in your endeavours in making sure that we get some changes in that plan. It's moved by the Deputy Mayor, it's seconded by Councillor Wayne Walker. All those in favour say aye.
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 Contrary, no. Declare that carried. 14, would somebody like to move item 14?
So move.
Deputy
Second.
Mayor, seconded Councillor Walker, thank you. And that's just the planning information and memos. And well, can we add the one that went out yesterday? Is that appropriate? Sorry, this one here from me to members, if we can just include that one as well. So all those in favour say aye, contrary no, declare that carried. Nothing extraordinary, I'll just check. No. We're complete. Thanks members, it's been a long haul today, interrupted by a couple of workshops, and